do it.
Okay. Welcome to the Book Bungalow's virtual author event with Terry Katasus Jennings, award-winning author of the new Definitely Dominguita chapter book series. Here's book one, Night of the Cape, and you can see she's got them all lined up behind her. And Captain Dom's Treasure, book two. My name is Tanya Mills, and I'm the owner and manager of the Book Bungalow in St. George, Utah, Southern Utah's only independent bookstore offering all new books and a full range of events. We're still doing our events virtually for now, except for I have to say that next on the evening of March 22nd, we're going to do a large outdoor drive-through book tour with Jeff Kinney.
My gosh.
Yeah, he's coming to St. George. It's amazing. It's all socially distanced. So if you have kids or grandkids who might be interested, I'll put the link in the chat box in a minute. Anyway, back to Terry and her new series. We're down to these last two copies in the store, and she's going to be here, I think, Tuesday. She said she'd sign them. But you can order both by either calling the store at 435-619-8200 or going on our website. And I'll put the store number and our website link in the chat box again. I've already put in the chat box the link to her website, if you scroll up to the top, and where you can order the books from our website. We're recording this event, and we'll include all of these links, including the YouTube link, because once I've got it recorded, I'll put it on our YouTube channel. And we'll send all of you who registered an email following this event with all those links. Let me see. And finally, I think the publishing world has begun to really embrace diversity in a big way. In fact, I've been asked to do part of the Reading the West Awards for my regional booksellers association, and they're really, I'm judging the young adult genre, and I have to say I'm the oldest one on the judging panel. All these other younger booksellers are, but they're really emphasizing diversity. And if you were to live out here in the West, of course you do partly,
right?
Part of the time,
right?
You could think about that in the future, trying to have your publisher put your books in for.
Okay.
It's called the Reading the West Awards with
Okay.
the Mountains and Plains Independent Booksellers Association. Anyway, I think they're trying to embrace diversity both in the authors they publish and the characters that inhabit their stories. And we can see this in both adult and children's literature. And Terry's new book, Definitely Dominguita, Night of the Cape, was an Amazon editor's pick for March, a Kirkus Critics pick for the week, and it received a Kirkus starred review. I need to admit someone else. Welcome, April. Okay. Terry is by no means a newcomer. She's won awards for both children's nonfiction and fact-based fiction. In addition, she writes for various educational outlets, including the Smithsonian's Science and Technology for Children series. Among other awards, her first book, Gopher to the Rescue, A Volcano Recovery Story, was named the Outstanding Science Trade Book in 2013 by the National Science Teachers Association and Children's Book Council. Her second book, Sounds of the Savannah, was honored as Bank Street Center's Best Children's Book of the Year in 2016. These first two books in her new series are her 8th and 9th published books, I believe. She also has a blog, kcswildfacts.com, hosted by Cool Cat, or KC, a now famous feline blogger. Are you still doing that?
That one's kind of gone by the wayside because I started doing so much writing
Uh-huh.
at the time that it took to do that, and to find good science stories, was not working. But I love the idea of connecting with kids.
Yeah. That,
So we'll see. We'll see.
okay. Well, if you ever pick it back up, she shares her love of science and quirky facts in that on that blog. With all that said, a major focus of our conversation today will be her background as a Cuban American and its impact on her writing, this series in particular. As we talk, if you have questions you'd like addressed, please type them in the chat box. And I already have one that was sent by email from Ray. So you don't need to type yours. I'll just read yours out to her. And I'll share the questions with her. Let's begin with Ray's, and then I'll go into mine while the rest of you may be thinking of other questions. Ray asks, I'm writing a novel in third person omniscient point of view. I am told that is the least desirable point of view. And that's certainly the case for young adult, let me tell you. And that publishers don't like it. I'm also told that changing point of view from one character to another is wrong, or at least if you do so, you should start a new chapter or have an obvious break where the point of view changes. I would appreciate your thoughts on these point of view questions.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Tanya, for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And of course, St. George is our second home, so I love being there and talking to you guys and see some familiar faces. And thank you so much for coming up. So, Ray, I have some, maybe I don't know enough about what the publishers themselves think as far as the third person omniscient. What I do know is that writing for children, when you are on the shoulder of the protagonist, you can be so much more immediate. And that's, so I'm not seeing that third person omniscient is necessarily bad. I think that anything that you do well is going to be noticed. So if you're doing it well, I don't think you have to worry about it. But having said that, to be closest to the protagonist, being on their shoulder is good. But I have a book that's I have a book that I've written. It hasn't been published, but it's, my agent has it, and she's, and we're working on it. And she hasn't said, hey, you need to change this from third person omniscient. I am more of the time with one character, but you kind of know what's in everybody's, you kind of say what's in everybody's head. So I think the thing is, if you do something right, if you do it well, I don't think you have to worry about what the publishers think. I think the publishers will. And if you have a good story and they don't like the idea, I've had several times that editors have said, that have not bought my book yet, but they have said, will you do this differently? And so, if you have a good story, I don't think that I would, worry too much about it. I would worry about changing point of view in the middle of a chapter. That is just really difficult on the reader. To me, and it's more difficult on you too, because you have to let the reader know, hey, now I'm in somebody else's head, and you have to be obvious about it. And that just kind of cuts, to me, it just cuts right in the middle of the reader's consciousness, and you stop them. And so, yeah, I would, a lot of what I have seen, and to be honest with you, in the last 2-3 years, I have not, I don't read a lot of adult fiction. It has to be very, very good for me to spend the time. I read a lot of nonfiction, obviously, because I like to write it. And of course, I've been reading a lot of middle grade, and some young adult books, but mostly middle grade, so that I can, because I'm going to school on what other writers do. So yeah, so I haven't read a lot, but I think just my experiences, just, have the chapter, one chapter by Penn. There's a new book by young adult writers called Between Bitter and Sweet, or Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet. Cute book. Well, no, it's not cute. It's heart-wrenching. But all of young adult stuff is heart-wrenching. but it's well done. And Penn has her chapters, and Sandra has his chapters, and you see that how they're each seeing the same thing. The story advances from here to here to here to here. And sometimes Xander might have two chapters in a row, but you always know who's talking from the title of the chapter. So yeah, good luck with your writing. I think it's exciting that you're working on something. And again, if you do it right, if you have a good story, I wouldn't worry about what people think.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you writing for Ray? Are you writing for adults or for children?
Adults.
Adults? Yeah.
And I appreciate your comments, Terry. It's very helpful. I'm in a small group that Tanya helped put together for us, and over a year ago, and we're still going.
Good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
And this started as with no goals or ambition. It's the first thing I've written, and I've wanted to write for a long time. And I had no idea where it was going to go. And it's still going, and I'm nearly finished with the manuscript. I'm about 130,000 words right now, nearly done. The point of view thing is only problematic for me. And I understand the advantage of first person and so forth in conversation, because what I am inclined to do when Mary is speaking, and let's say that this section is in Mary's head, Mary will say something, and I will want to say how she feels happy about it. Mary said that, feeling very happy, or Mary was sad when this happened, or whatever. And if Mary's talking to Bob, I also want, I know what Bob is feeling. And so Mary says, it's great to see you, feeling happy to see Bob again. And Bob says, yeah, I'm happy to see you too. And I want to, not all the time, but occasionally would like to say how Bob feels about what he said, or how he's feeling when he said that. And that's when the other people in my group, one of whom is a published author, who is the one that called this to my attention, said, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And so I'm learning to avoid it, but it's
let me.
I'm having.
Okay, let me just. There are different approaches you can take with that, but I don't want to. We need to get back to.
We can talk about it offline afterwards if you'd like. I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got, like, I think of Barbara Kingsolver's The Poisonwood Bible, and you have very strong characters, different, sisters, and they're all talking about the same thing, but they're doing it with their own voices. And she took the time to make it their own voices. So it depends on how important this Bob guy is to your story. Anyway, let's move on. I first wanted to ask Terry, how old were you when you left Cuba and came to the US with your family? And could you tell us what you recall of that experience?
Well, I was 12, so I do recall a lot. Cuba was in turmoil and had been taken over by Castro. So when we came, it was 1961, September, and he took power in January 1959, January 1, or January 8th. Depends on what you consider taking power. But he my uncle worked for the bad guys, the previous president. He was in the Air Force, and he was a high official in the Air Force. So he's considered to be for Batista. To be honest with you, I don't think he was. I think at one point he backed him, but I don't think later on he was. And I couldn't. He was dead by the time that I started writing to really
Mm.
to care to ask him. But but when the Bay of Pigs came around, because of my uncle, my dad was put in jail, and my dad was a very non confrontational, not apolitical person. He worked for the National Bank of Cuba. He's his job was, he felt very strongly that he needed to uphold, to be there, because it was like the Federal Reserve Bank. If Janet Yellen left when she was the
The head
president,
of the Fed.
was that high, but somebody like that says, I don't have confidence in the country, um, things can fall apart. And so he stayed because of that. Now, again, he wasn't that high, but he felt that very strongly. And he was put in jail. So once he was put in jail, we had to leave. He was let go after 3 days. He came home wearing loafers, which he never wore. He wore tie-up shoes, and he was wearing striped underwear, which he never wore. It wasn't his. A coat that wasn't his. But he was alive. So that was, and we had people behind our house yelling, "Shoot him, shoot him."
Ugh.
2 nights in a row, the 2 nights that he was gone. So it was tough. So
How did, okay, you were able to get on a plane and leave?
we were, which was an amazing thing. Right then, in April, soon, which was when the Bay of Pigs happened, he left. And Che Guevara, you hear about him, and he was, he killed a lot of people, and he was a communist, and whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But he actually let my father go. He got him out of jail because my father worked for him. He was the president of the National Bank of Cuba, and he took my father out of jail. So that was the only reason. And he was allowed to go. So we put in applications to go to Spain, to go to Mexico, to go to the United States, to go to Brazil, anywhere my dad had connections. We put applications to go and bought visas and did everything. And luckily, the United States came through first, and we already had, my uncle had come, and my other uncle had come, and my mom's family. One of my other uncles on my mom's side, he worked for Reader's Digest, so he left right after, Castro came. So it was a lot of people already in the United States. So it was a good thing that we got to come.
Did you have any family that stayed behind?
My grandmother stayed, and my one uncle stayed. At the time that I left, I didn't realize. So I was 12. To me, this was an adventure. And I was a reader. To me, hey, a new adventure, a new place, man, this is gonna be great. Didn't realize that we only had $50 for our family. Didn't realize we didn't have a place to live, and didn't realize that I would never see my grandmother again. We all thought, I think, perhaps not my father. My father was a pragmatist, and maybe even a way on the other side, a glass half empty kind of person. But we all thought that we were coming back, never realizing that I would never see my grandmother again. But I was coming to see my cousins, and that was exciting.
Yeah. So, Ray asked, did you know a Mr. Machado?
I knew the name. I don't know, but Mr. Machado, there was a Machado that was in the Machado. There was a President Machado, and yeah. So
Okay.
did not.
Okay. What was the hardest part for you probably about leaving didn't really come till a little later when you realized you weren't going to see your grandmother again?
Right. It came in, it's a dawning that that kind of comes, and you graduate from high school and she's not there. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that a lot of that is what's in this series? Because you keep reflecting on your abuelo.
I think it's an homage to my abuela. Yeah. It's an I wish I had been able to. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what were your biggest challenges? Did you speak English
Hell no.
when you came? Okay. So what were your biggest challenges as a young child in this new country?
Being very different. I hated that I was different because I was 12 years old. Every 12-year-old wants to be the same as everybody else, dressed the same as everybody else. I did not speak English. I think in 5th and 6th grade, we had English twice a week with an real English from London woman who drove an ambulance during World War II, and she told us all about that. But I did not learn a lot of English from her. And so I knew like see Jane run and see Dick run, but I did not know anything really. And my dad put me in school the next day after we came, which was a huge, huge. I mean, I didn't have any chance. It was total immersion.
Wow.
The girls there, one of the things that happened was that in gym class, you had to change into these little gym uniforms. And after gym class, you had to take a shower in front of God and everybody, be naked. I've never been naked in front of God and everybody. It was awful. And but English was the worst thing for me, and being different. We didn't have any clothes. I mean, the little bit that we had was awful looking because by the time we left, the economy in Cuba was in tatters. And so my mom had bought all
Where
these.
did you come to in the States?
We first came to a place called Riviera Beach, Florida, because that was where one uncle was there, and we lived with them for a few weeks. And then we went to Tampa, where my other uncle was, and he was redoing all his stuff to be a doctor. He had to redo his residency. He may have had to redone his internship, but anyway, we lived with them for about a year until my dad got a fairly, not a good job, but a job doing bookkeeping for a real estate company. And he eventually got a job with the Federal Reserve in Richmond. And so we moved to Richmond when I was the summer between 8th and 9th grade. So I started in 7th grade. I first came in 7th grade. And then the summer between 8th and 9th grade, we moved to Richmond. And,
Okay.
so I stayed in Richmond the whole rest of the time.
All right. So the bully, is he based on a kid that you knew in Florida or in Virginia, or you just made him up?
No, I just love villains. I love having delicious villains. No, I didn't base him on anybody, but over the years, you find what people do to make you feel bad, and how they talk. And you store that away. I just loved having good villains, and I just loved having her have to deal with him. Otherwise, if you don't have a good villain, you're not, you
You don't
as a
have a good
kid,
story.
a kid's book, you're, who cares? So you
Yeah.
really have to have a really good, delicious villain. And in Captain Dom, the villain is a lot like Long John Silver. And I'm really proud of that, because one minute he's loving and being so encouraging, and he's telling her how good she is, and she's smart as paint, and he thinks gold dust of her, and he's just doing all these wonderful things to her. And then the next minute he's, about to stab her in the back. So yeah, it's very much like Long John Silver. And I love the fact that that I was able to make him. I love villains.
So you, the first kind of being based on Don Quixote, were those some of your favorites that your abuela read to you?
Okay, well, Now I'll tell you what the truth is was my dad was the one that read to me, but I just wanted to do something for my abuela. It was just the one
Okay.
that I had that had to happen. But and he and my dad was a huge Don Quixote fan, and he just always brought that, you know, he talked about it, but he wasn't. There's a lot of chivalry and honor in Spanish, in the Spanish makeup and the Cuban makeup. There is. And so, do the right thing, you know, don't ever let your honor be tarnished. Always tell the truth. There was all these things that are all, um, they all are Don Quixote, but it's also the Spanish character
Okay.
that seeped down to Cuba. Um,
Which is perfect for this age group.
yeah,
It
yeah,
it is. They
yeah.
don't get enough of this stuff.
Right. And so yeah, so the books that I read as a kid, I read a lot of Jules Verne. I read 80,000 Around the World in 80 Days was probably my favorite book. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The second, I read a lot of Robert Louis Stevenson. I read everything. Ivanhoe. Don't think I ever got through Gulliver's Travels. Don't I did not get through Moby Dick, but I did read the classics. That was what that was what came, and they were in Spanish, and they were obviously kids versions. The Three Musketeers, all of those were they were pretty long. I think probably Treasure Island, I read the real thing because that was a child's book, but
Uh-huh.
Tears was not, but it's still, they were pretty long.
So at what point, since you didn't know English, um, at what point did you feel totally comfortable? At what age?
It-
Reading English and writing in English?
Reading English, it didn't take that long. I When my dad died, I found a little clipping that he had so we came in September, that in January I made the honor roll and it was in the newspaper, and he kept that clipping in his wallet forever. And I found out when he died, I don't know, 20 some years later, or maybe even more, maybe 30 years later. So yeah, so I think by then I was doing well enough as far as reading, as far as being able to write, to come up with a story, maybe high school, 11th grade. I was writing in 11th grade. I was trying to write.
Were you trying to write stories?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
I remember writing something in ninth grade. I remember, and I remember writing something in when we were in Tampa, not in Tampa. Yeah, maybe ninth, 10th grade. Yeah, I was writing things. But I don't do very well. Some things I still don't do very well in. I don't do well with prepositions. In Spanish, there's one en means in, into, at, onto, upon, all those words. And so that doesn't work.
Yeah,
well.
English is a complicated language.
Yeah, which and that, I still don't get that right. And it's very embarrassing when an editor, corrects you, and they think that and they're right that I ought to know better. But oh well.
You've been publishing now, let's see.
Since
Well,
2000.
okay.
Yeah,
It's
because
editors
watching.
are so inundated now with so much. It seems like they don't have the time they used to have to
Right.
really go over manuscripts.
They don't have the time they used to have to. Well, I get what you're saying. It's hard now. If you don't have an agent, it's hard to get your work before
Yeah.
an editor. But I think I can see that the first book of the series was very good. Was pretty good by the time the editor got it, because my agent is an editorial agent, and she and I, got it to where it was really, really good. The second book, I was going kind of solo, and not kind of, I was going solo. I mean, um, Natalie, my agent, has seen it, but she had not worked with me on that. And the and I had good edit, I still had good editorial input from the editor. And the
That's
third
good.
book, we've done the third book already, and that's um, you know, they'll they'll change, and it has many passes. I mean, the editor reads it, and there's one copy editor, and there's a second copy editor. So by the time you get it, you've gone at least the least amount that you're going to do is four passes. Um,
And
which
let's give the us an idea of the time that that takes. Because when was the date that you gave your manuscript to your agent to start shopping around
mhm.
and when was the date that you got a deal?
Okay, so that is this. You're not going to like this. Let me talk first about another book. Okay, so I've been working at this other book about Cuba that got me my agent. I had been writing. I started writing in 2008. I got my agent in 2017. I had a whole lot of, hey, send me, change the point of view, change this, change that, do more of this, do more of that to with agents, and they all said no. So, but eventually, I got it to the point that Natalie said yes. We worked on it, we submitted it, and it never sold. It went out on 2 rounds, and she did not want to send it out anymore because you don't want to burn any bridges. So we are reworking on it again. So that is gone. But now, meanwhile, while we were still working on that one, I had, the Dominguita one. And the Dominguita one, I got the idea in March of 2018. By 2019, we had gotten it together and it was in good shape. And that was March of 2019. By the 1st of May, we had a contract. So that was really quick. But now it took another, I don't think I got my first editorial letter till December. And
Of 2020?
2020, yeah.
Well, is that partly because of the pandemic?
2019, it was May
2019.
2019.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So then, and then, each book has been, and then I kept thinking, well, I've submitted a proposal for books 3 and 4, and I need to know what she thinks, what the editor thinks before I write it. Well, one day she said, "Can I have book 3 weeks from now?" And I went, "Okay, sure." So I've not written a lot. So I wrote that one in 3 weeks, and thank God it worked well. And then I decided, well, I'm going to write book 4, whether she approves of it or not. And I can always change, but I don't want to be caught with my pants down again. It was, I mean, writing a book in 3 weeks. Having done a lot of work for hire before, where editors tell where you get an assignment and you write something and you have to write it in 2 weeks or you have to write it in 2 months. I was able to do it, but and I had already done research and I already had a pretty good outline, so that was good. But I didn't want that to happen again. I didn't want to have to do it in 3 weeks again. So I probably took about 6 weeks to write the fourth book.
So did you know in high school you wanted to be a writer?
I
Or
knew,
did you have another ambition in mind?
no, I knew in elementary school I wanted to be.
Elementary.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But in high school, I had a teacher who kind of poo-pooed me and said, "You can't." She told me one time that I had written, I had used a word in the thesaurus that a Cuban person should not have known. Of course, I was such a big reader that I did. That was, and it's one of those where it was strident. It was one of those words that translates directly. And I got ticked off and I said, "I'm out of here." So I did not go I got myself out of her creative writing class. I did not do anything about writing. And there was a really nice math teacher that I loved very much. She was very sweet to me. And so I majored in math and I went to the same college as she did. So there you go. So teachers can make things happen for you.
That's true. Did you ever write in Spanish?
No,
No.
not really. No, I started writing, after I came here.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I was always reading, and yeah.
What kinds of things have you included in this series that kind of are reflective of the Cuban culture? Or is she pretty Americanized?
Abuela is not Americanized. Dom is. Dom is the kid, but the food, I guess, okay, so the grandmother, Abuela, what she brings in is that what we were talking about earlier, the chivalry and the honor and you have to be good to everybody, and you can't let um somebody, you have to behave when you go to somebody else's house, because they're going to think that all Cuban kids are bad if you misbehave. So you need to uphold the honor of all the Cubans. So what Abuela says is, she still has her Cubanisms. Um, the food is very much a part of it. And, these kids love the food, and it's a huge part of the book on purpose, because what I'm trying to do, we have one Anglo kid, and the two Cuban American kids, Dom and Pancho is the secondary character, and then Steph is the Anglo kid. And what I try to do is to use food as a metaphor. You know, try it, you'll like it. And when Steph looks at this Cuban food that is different, and is some of it is ugly and yucky looking, but she tries it and she ends up liking it. And I'm saying, okay, well, think about this food, try it, you like it, think about the culture, try it, you like it, think about the human beings that are associated with this culture, try them, you'll like them, and you can become friends with these, just like you can become friends with this food. So that was a conscious thing that I did. um, I think Dom is still steeped in the honor and all that of of the of knighthood, and I think that's part of the Spanish thing, but not so much. She's pretty much an American kid, and her mom. And another thing that I tried to do was not show the Cuban household as being different. I mean, mom has a good job. She's a kind of like a web designer or a bookkeeper. She does
Mhm.
a whole lot of stuff. Dad, we never know what dad's job is, but they're normal, regular people, so that we can make a statement that everybody's human, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Why did you decide to name her Dominguita?
Well, that was a really long story, because uh, this kid named Don Capote, Don Quixote, Don, Don Capote, kind of ended up in my head one day while I was pulling weeds. And I thought, whoa, what a name, Don Capote. Wow, that's great. How about a character that wants to be a knight? Ooh, that's great. I love that. So I started writing the beginning of the book in my head, and knowing stuff about Don Quixote, thinking about this kid that loves to read, and who people tell him don't read, that you're wasting your life, and he decides to go out and become a knight. And so I talked to my daughter, who is she's kind of my conscience, and she says, "No way, Jose, you can't have a boy. It's got to be a girl." So when she became a girl, all the doors opened, because now um, you could have a conflict. Girls can't be knights, you know, and then you have a bully, and all of that opened up the conflict that I didn't have with a boy. With a boy, it might have been just this adventure, that adventure, the other adventure. Now I had a real conflict. And so, but then I still like the name Don Capote. So then I thought, well, Dom could be Dom. And I have a cousin named Domingo, which is, it's Sunday. That's just a name. And my one of my grandkids is named Dominic. So I thought, we could call her Dom Capote. And then I thought, okay, Dom del Capote, Knight of the Cape. Okay, I can do that. And you can slur it and say Don Capote and Don Capote, Don Quixote. It still works. So that's the long story of how it worked.
Well, cool. Did you also have a brother growing up? I mean,
I
where you
did.
got Raffi?
He was 9 years younger than me. So no,
Not
Rafi,
older.
a lot of stuff that happened because it had to happen. Abuela had to be, start feeling, Alzheimer's because I needed her to be away so that Dom would miss her. And I needed Rafi to be Cervantes, to be the chronicler of the um, of the book, just
That's
like the Cervantes was in with Don Quixote. But having said that, once that dynamic, again, the dynamic worked so well because now they're doing this not just for him to write it, but he can prove to Ernie Bublassi, the villain, that of course Dom is a worthy knight. And then they're doing this for the grandmother. So the
Yeah.
book, Abuela gets it and she can help her remember what the kids are doing. So that would be great. And then that keeps going from book to book to book, that they take pictures of themselves. They take selfies. And her mother gave her book. Once Abuela left, her mother gave her a phone in case of an alien invasion or to let her know what time when she got home from school. So, Dom is allowed, a fourth grader, that's how, a third grader is allowed to have a phone. So yeah, she does, that there's things happen because you need them for the plot. And I needed Rafi to be there for the plot.
Okay. So what town or city is Mundy Town based on? You have
It's more based on my Cuban, the place where I lived in Marianao, except Marianao did not have any tall buildings, but the shopkeepers were friendly and everybody looked after you and you were not as a kid and kids. I compare notes with some of my cousins and they were not allowed to roam free like I did. And they all had people taking them here and people taking them there and all that. And I did. The place where I was, everybody knew everybody, and I was allowed to go places and by myself at that age. So and there was a grocer down the street that I liked going to see. So so yeah, that's the place that it's like. I call them Mundy Town because that's the town where my husband was, little part of Tazewell, Virginia, where he was born in Southwest Virginia. It's called Mundy Town. So
okay.
I thought that you just pick what you know.
Well, I thought it'd be fun if you read a portion of your book,
All right.
just a few pages, or to give us a feel for.
All right.
And then
Well,
I'll ask my last question after that. I haven't seen any other questions in the chat room.
all right. I talked already about when she about Abuela and all that. So you guys already know that. So I won't read the beginning, but this is when she becomes a knight. So she goes to see Mr. Kowalski, the grocer. And Mr. Kowalski says, "Ah, Don Capote, the knight in shining armor." Mr. Kowalski bowed. He had a bushy brown and black mustache, like the woolly worms that tell how long winter's going to last. "Dom," she said, "not Don, and I'm not a knight yet. That's what you're supposed to do." "Ah, yes, I see. My wife is already looking for the key to the sword case." He pointed to a glass case high on a wall below a neon sign for puckered pickles. Dom gasped. The case was bathed in light from the pickle sign. The silver blade gleamed neon green. It looked magical, like it had been placed there just for her. The perfect sword for a knighting ceremony. "Where did it come from?" Dom asked, snapping a picture. My Polish ancestors, handed down through generations, Mr. Kowalski said. Very suitable, Dom thought that's what a knight would say. Then she thought she'd better check that Mr. Kowalski was legit. You come from a long line of knights? She asked. Knights and kings. Who else but noblemen will call such a handsome sword their own? We'll knight you as soon as my wife finds the key. Most honored, Dom said, starting to slip out of her armor. You know, I need to hold a vigil over my armor before I can become a knight. That's what all knight books say. Don Quixote, King Arthur, they spent the night watching over their armor before they were dubbed. Dom nodded as if Mr. Kowalski had agreed. I'll find a corner by the vegetables. Nobody goes over there anyway. We close at 9 o'clock. No problem. Trafi's coming by to pick me up at closing. Dom carried her armor to the fruit and vegetable aisle. Then she placed her armor between the bins of rutabagas and parsnips. Then she stood over it. She stood on one leg and then the other. She knelt over the armor. She recited nursery rhymes in the night before Christmas. She sang the songs her mommy sang to her when she was little. She sneaked a peek at the clock. What? Only 40 minutes had passed since the vigil started? She bundled up her armor and stepped toward the register. I think my vigil has lasted long enough, she said as soon as Mr. Kowalski was free. You can dub me anytime you're ready. But I'm staying until 9. Dom shrugged. Don Quixote didn't last very long either. We should go ahead. I call Rafi. He's on his way over. She put on her armor, knelt and bowed her head. Dom, my wife hasn't found the keys to the sword case yet. Oh, yeah. We'll have to make do. What about this? Mr. Kowalski showed her a stick he used to bring down the shutters that protected the store at night. It ended in a hook. Dom used a corner of her cape to wipe the grease off the end. It'll work, she said. But since your wife isn't here, let's wait for Rafi. He can take a picture. Of course, Mr. Kowalski said. That's the knighting ceremony. I love the puckered pickles.
Yes. Have you read this to any kids yet?
No, I normally read the beginning because this one's a little bit longer. And with kids so far, I've only had, I have a 45-minute thing, and it takes a lot to connect and disconnect and ask questions and all this. So technology takes time. If I'm in person, I'll probably read that. But I read the beginning also to set them up as to why Dom, has to take care of Abuela, and the beginning. I do more of a setup. But yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite scene in the first 2 books. The third book has another really, really cool scene. So yeah.
At what age do you think children begin? Well, you noticed you were 12. You knew you were different.
I was.
But
yeah.
You're a grandmother. At what age do you think children begin noticing differences?
Yeah, and I've worked a lot with kids with my other books. So I'm thinking 4th and 5th grade for sure. They're starting to be snitty to each other and understand that there's differences and understand that I can make you feel bad by saying something mean. And so that's when I think so. And that's what I think that is so important to do it at a chapter book level, because in chapter book, you're talking about 1st, 2nd grade, and they still have that open mind and that they can learn that we're all human. And I hope that makes a difference. I hope that talking to the younger kids makes a difference. But I think by 5th grade, they're already learning what we adults do, and copying what we adults do, and it's not good.
Are you your other books that are nonfiction, are they geared to the same age group?
Some of them. The science books are K through 5. They're picture books. I have a couple of have the women's liberation movement is totally nonfiction, and one about hydroelectric power. Those are for high school kids, middle school and high school kids, older. And I have have another picture book coming out next year with Border Holiday House, and then I have a biography for high school, again for middle school and high schoolers coming out in November next year.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, my final question is, how important do you think it is for to show different races, nationalities, cultures in children's literature?
It's essential because you know, somebody asked me, well, was I looking for kids that looked like me when I was buying books for my children? And the bad thing is that I didn't even think about that because it was so ingrained that every book that was there had blonde, blue-eyed children. Even the books, you know, I have drawers and drawers, virtual drawers full of stories that I have written that have not been totally, you know, gone anywhere. And they're all blonde, blue-eyed kids, redheads like my husband. None of them were brown kids or kids with a Cuban background because they were not being bought. But now there's affirmative action. But let's look at there's the We Need Diverse Books folks have come up with some things, and there's like, and don't quote my numbers, but the magnitude is correct. There's like 15 or 20% Latinx people in the United States, and only about 5% characters and authors with Latinx backgrounds being published. Now, it was in 2018, and 2019 was no better. There are, but having said that, there's a lot more being done now, and there's affirmative action being taken by the publishers. They are trying to get more diverse books, and you see it when you read it. There's I belong to a group of people that are their books are debuting in 2021, and there's a lot of people with very, very diverse backgrounds, wonderful stories. They're all wonderful stories, but they are people that would not have been bought, that their stories would not have been bought, 10 years ago. It needs to be happening. And I'm glad that it's happening. I'm glad that it happened to me, but it needs to be a lot more than what we're doing. The kids need mirrors to see themselves in. The Latin kids and the Black kids and the Muslim kids need to see mirrors in which they can see themselves in these books. And the rest of us need to have windows into those characters' lives, so that
That's true.
And that they're human. The whole point is understanding that every one of us is human. When you distill it down to the essence, that's the only thing that matters.
Exactly. Thank you so much for talking about your own personal history and your books and answering all our questions. Are there any other questions out there? If not, then I think, remember everyone, you can buy copies of her books from our store or order them through our website. I forgot to put the store link down, the 35. Whoops.
Yeah, I'll be there for a couple of weeks. So
yeah, she's okay. That's our store phone number. And regardless, you'll all be receiving a follow-up email with all these links, as well as a link to the recording. Thank you again, Terry, and I can't wait to meet you in person on Tuesday.
Look forward to it.
Okay. All of you stay safe and well. Thanks for logging in.
Thanks for coming, guys.